Hey VC, so it's time for another episode of Let's Shit on These Album Covers. Got a couple of new ones today to show you. Want to thank anybody who has given me suggestions for these covers in the past. Keep the suggestions coming and let's get right into it. First album cover I want to show is Herbie Mann, Push Push, for obvious reasons. And let me say right off the bat, Herbie Mann, get over yourself already. That cover is just so unflattering. You play the flute. You're not a guitar shredder. You play the flute. Okay, so Herbie Mann, if you don't already know, was a flute player in the 1970s and can either be credited or blamed for being one of the early practitioners of what we now call smooth jazz. He had a magnificent mustache. When he would perform live, women used to throw their tampons on stage at him. Okay, I don't know if that's true. I may have just made that up. But nonetheless, Herbie Mann was somewhat of an influential jazz flutist in the 70s or 80s. And can we agree that the flute is probably the most emasculating instrument you can play as a male jazz musician? So Herbie Mann, put your shirt on, dry the oil or the water off your hairy chest, and just go back to playing music. And actually, he can't because he died in 2003. But I'm talking to 70s era Herbie Mann. If I could go back in time, okay, it doesn't matter, all right? Let's just move on to the next one. Okay, we're going to stay in the jazz genre for my next pick, and this is going to be jazz vocalist Jimmy Scott's album, Falling in Love is Wonderful. This picture is just all kinds of wrong. Even Bill Cosby's uncomfortable with this image. I don't want to say it's a product of its time. I can't imagine any time where this image would be okay. And I'm sure it wasn't Jimmy Scott's fault. I think artists back in the day, there was an art director or somebody from the record company who was responsible for the photo shoot and said, okay, this is what it's going to look like. Jimmy, go sit over there. You look like you're passed out on the floor. But I think in the context of the times that we live in, this is not an album I would want to have in my collection. It's not an album I would ever show, which is very unfortunate. I have no idea what the quality of music is like, but I'm sure it's fine. But unfortunately, Jimmy Scott is the victim of some very poor artistic choices. Okay, the last record that I'm going to show, you've probably seen before. I'd be very surprised if you haven't. But it is by a country duo called the Louvin Brothers, and it's the album Satan is Real. Now, the Louvin Brothers were actually brothers, Ira and Charlie Louvin. They were a country duo. They played gospel, they played bluegrass in the 1950s and early 1960s. Ira Louvin was kind of the country music version of Ike Turner. He was a wife-abusing philanderer. He was married 4 times. Matter of fact, his third wife actually shot him, I think 4 or 5 times when he was knocking her around. And he did survive that. However, he did die in a head-on car crash in 1965 with his 4th wife. But they were a proselytizing duo, I guess you could say. And this album, as much as it looks like they're kind of having a goof on the whole Satanism thing, they were very much preaching on this record. There's actually some spoken word passages that sound almost like a sermon. And so they were preaching, trying to get people out of the clutches of Satan. And this album cover was actually designed by Ira. It was not some, record label decision. They actually designed that. So they're at a rock quarry. You've got this ridiculous cardboard-looking Satan there. They have some tires in the background that are set on fire, which are supposed to, I guess, look like the landscape of hell. But it's, for the time, I'm sure it was pretty frightening, but now it just kind of looks a little bit silly. Satan is not at all menacing. They're certainly not looking like they're having anything but a good time. So I think somewhat the message is a little bit lost, whatever they were going for on this record, but it's still a fun one to look at. I still have some fun with this one, and it's, I think, probably one of the first popular album covers to have satanic imagery. So what do you think about that? All right, hope you've had some fun with this episode. I know I have. Keep the suggestions coming, and take care.